Hello everyone, welcome back to SwitchUp, and as with any sponsored video, we do give away a copy. So if you'd like to win a copy of this one, let us know your thoughts down in the comments.
Yep, thank you to the publishers of Dros who have asked us to have a look at their game. It's a 3D puzzle platformer, I guess, with some interesting mechanics, and we'll go through all of it in a moment to let you know what it's all about.
Yeah, as with last month, you can save 5% on your eShop credit. Buy your credit over at switchup.gg and you get 5% in cash back. All right, what's Dros all about? Well, let's find out.
So in terms of story, the game focuses on two different characters. You have the captain and you have a small blob who is a Dros, hence the name of the game. The captain is a bounty hunter and is trying to fulfill their latest contract when they get into a small amount of bother and have to be helped out by the Dros.
And when Glen says a small amount of bother, he means they have their arm sliced off.
Yeah, their arm falls off. Yeah, exactly right. So the Dros is like a gelatinous blob, and they kind of fuse the captain and the arm back together and then decide they're gonna come along for the ride. And basically, without going too much into the gameplay mechanics, the two characters both have their own strengths and weaknesses, and you'll use both as you go through each of the stages.
You will encounter a number of different NPCs as well. There's like an old geezer who helps you out with your blueprints, and a few other random characters, like one wearing an old plague costume.
Yes, and by speaking to them or finding bits and bobs about the world, it unlocks a bit more of the lore that you can then go into and read if you want a bit more backstory.
As far as gameplay goes, well, it's like Glen says, it's an isometric but three-dimensional puzzle platformer using the two different characters that you can switch between whenever you want.
Yeah, so starting with the captain then, they obviously are wearing armour, so are much heavier, therefore cannot jump, but they are stronger and can use their sword to attack the enemies that you'll come across through the stages or break down doors, etc. Dros is much lighter and therefore can jump, but if seen by an enemy will be destroyed very quickly.
Whenever I get to play as a character like this, I get World of Goo vibes, you know, when I'm playing as that little ball of gooey whatever it is. Now Dros can jump around and double jump as well, and generally is the more athletic of the two. Not athletic, what would be the word?
Agile
of the two, and can make their way around, but obviously without any offensive abilities. Sometimes we'll have to rely on stealth.
Yep, there'll be times as well where you may need to step on a switch with the captain, using their weight to push it down, then become Dros and move through a door that's just opened, find a way for the captain to then join them later on in the level. And there'll be times where the Dros can jump into a pipe or a small, little area that the captain wouldn't be able to get through, and again find a way for the captain to join them. It's nice actually that once you've achieved whatever it is you're trying to do, you can reconnect with the captain by pressing R rather than have to manually make your way back to them, which could be a pain at times otherwise.
Yeah, that recall ability is a bit of a lifesaver, has to be said. Also, you don't really have to worry about things like death. Although you can fall off the edges of platforms and into goo and slime, you'll just respawn on the edge or go back to the area just next to it. So it's not one that you do have to worry too much about perishing. Now, there are about 40 levels in here. In terms of level design, they're actually quite nice. Weirdly, it reminds me of a game I used to play when I was a kid called Ape Escape. Do you remember that?
I've heard of it, don't think I ever played it.
Now, in terms of the core gameplay, there you were like looking for different monkeys and stuff.
Right.
But the way that each level is its own encapsulated thing, and you kind of, once you move on, you forget that last one and it's its own challenge.
Yes, yeah. So you will end a level by finding, I think they're called like alchemy doorways.
Yeah.
You're looking for an alchemist. That was your objective in the first place, and each of the self-contained levels has a set amount of collectibles that you can find. But not just this, it also has like almost like achievements, I guess.
Yeah.
There's a pickup you can find called Primer, which you can convert into health should you need to, but if you finish a level with a certain amount of it or not having used a certain amount of it, then that will give you the little tick for that achievement for that level, you know?
Yeah, it's a nice idea. As I was saying before, difficulty isn't necessarily an issue, but by giving not taking damage an incentive, it's a nice idea. It's a good idea. On the subject of those collectibles, there are different diary entries that you can find around the world, and again, it gives a little bit more lore to it, and you can read these. You'll see them around on shelves and things, just to flesh out the experience a little.
Yeah, there's also an ability that Dros has where they can see like a blue hue on the floor, and this indicates that whilst there isn't a platform there to jump on or walk across, you can actually walk across it. So there'll be times where you'll feel like you're at a dead end, where you'll need to disconnect the two characters, become just Dros for a moment and look for these areas, and then you can pass through. And it does lead to some quite clever level design, as you mentioned a moment ago, and there are some decent puzzles in here. There are certainly some, you'll get into a flow, you'll do a few levels, and then you'll hit a brain scratcher, you know, and it's nice to have that every so often just to keep you fine-tuned as you go through.
It also drips in new mechanics and abilities, so you're not going to be stuck with the complete same set of skills throughout the entire 40 levels. And then once you finish the game, there's post-game content that keeps it interesting as well. So there's quite a lot here for your money. Usually these kinds of games are a few hours long. This one will take at least 6 or 7 hours. And then with that post-game content, it'll take you up to around 14 to do everything.
Yeah, I also thought it was quite good that it had combat. Generally in these sort of games you don't necessarily have that. I will say the combat is perhaps the weakest area. That, you know, certainly is a puzzle platformer first and foremost. You do have a swipe with your sword and a block, and you do need to use that. It's not a case of just wildly swiping. The enemies will almost have a chance every time you swipe to hit back at you, so you need to kind of swipe, block, swipe, get into that rhythm to defeat the enemies without taking too much damage.
Now visually it uses low poly art style, and it can look quite nice. I think my favourite aspect are actually the hand-drawn character portraits, and it runs at 60 frames per second as well, which is nice. There is a slight stutter on some of the camera motion, but we actually found a little workaround using my TV. But yeah, I think they just need to smooth out the frame pacing a tiny bit. Overall performance is pretty decent though.
Yeah, the story is told through not cutscenes, but like still images, as you mentioned, almost like comic book stills, aren't they? At times they'll change to a black and white aesthetic, and it does look nice, as you say. I found the levels, again, they made use of colour even in quite dingy environments at times. You know, you're in a sewer at one point and you have quite vivid, almost like garish, but not in a negative way. You know, they make good use of very bright colour palettes to bring the levels to life.
Then you've got sound and audio. Now this one, it's one of those where it doesn't necessarily jump out at you, but you do every now and then notice a bit of ambient music or some sound effects, characters who have gobbledygook speech attached to them, just to give it a little more life. So it's those small details that if they weren't there, you probably would notice it.
Yeah, for sure. And on that garbled language, I'm going to date myself quite horrendously here, but it reminded me, quite obscure reference as well, I'm afraid, but there was an episode of Red Dwarf, for anyone that's ever watched that, where they went to like a backwards world of Earth, and it sounds very much like the the language used in that episode. So that was about 30 years ago, so that makes me feel very old, I'm afraid.
Good episode.
It was a good episode, yeah, it was very funny.
Now, RRP on this one is £22.49, but there is a launch discount taking it down to just £8.99 all the way until essentially the beginning of August. I think August the 11th. Now, yeah, that's a nice discount. I think £8.99 is a good price for this one.
Yeah, for sure. For, as you said, was it 6-7 hours worth of gameplay, plus the collectibles if you are so inclined to chase them. Yeah, for that discount price, that's not a bad deal at all.
So that's it for that one. As I said at the start, if you want to win a copy, do let us know your thoughts down in the comments, and we'll give one of those away in a community post.
Yep, as Mark mentioned, if you are looking for eShop credit to pick this game up or any other game, of course, you can get your eShop cards over at our website, switchup.gg. You'll get yourself 5% back in cash back. In doing so, that you can use against a future purchase. Thanks again to the publishers of Dros for sponsoring this video. Thanks to our patrons and our channel members for your continued support, and to each and every one of you for watching our videos. Take care, and until next time, happy gaming.